have thought about what Darnell Mooney was going into this year. I did not expect Darnell Mooney to look like this, but he continues to score and really be a very good number 2 to Drake London. It's pretty crazy how great he's playing. And on top of that, and encompassing this entire season so far for the Falcons, Kirk Cousins, has the Falcons playing right now in line for them to have a winning season, which would be their first one since 2017, believe it or not. And again, first place in the NFC South. They've won their 5th game in the last 6 games that they have. And they had a great day in pressure, not just all offense, right? Because the offense has really been the main story for this Falcons team. On defense, they got to Dak Prescott 3 times, despite them being in last place in the NFL with 6 sacks entering yesterday's game. They're obviously up to 9 now. But again, you look at that, that's impressive for the Falcons, but I don't know if that says more about the Cowboys than it does really about the Falcons and the pressure they're able to generate. But still, that's something very positive to take for the Falcons. Just overall, very complete performance, I would think, yesterday for Atlanta, and that's why they got the win. Also, just touching on some of the notable performances, Kirk, he had 3 touchdowns, like I said, 222 yards. He was only sacked twice, and he was 19 of 24. So a very efficient day for him. Bijan, he did his thing, 19 carries, 86 yards. Tyler Algier scored the 1 rushing touchdown that the Falcons had in this game. Darnell Mooney, like I said, continuing to perform. 5 receptions, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Ray McCloud scored another one. Drake London scored the first one of the game. Kirk Cousins did fumble twice, and he did lose one of them. But, other than that, it's a pretty blemish-free performance from the Falcons. Whereas on the other side, getting to the main protagonist of the story, we have the Dallas Cowboys. A very bad day for them, other than the loss, because I don't think many people expected them to win. But when the game was close, then you had those injuries to Dak and to CeeDee, unfortunately, which we're going to touch on. But in the time being, Dak Prescott overall, before he got injured, he finished with 133 yards, a touchdown, sacked 3 times, like I said, and also a not bad 18 of 24 as well. He didn't turn the ball over. That's something we wanted to see more out of him. But again, unfortunately, he was injured in this game. Rico Dowdle had a great, insane touchdown catch, honestly, which kept the Cowboys in the game. He finished with 12 carries for 75 yards. And Jake Ferguson was I would say he was the main leading receiver in this game, just because he had 7 receptions for 71 yards. CeeDee had 8 receptions, but only 47 yards. He had a couple drops in there as well, which was pretty uncharacteristic of him. But yeah, when CeeDee is really the only thing the Cowboys have going for them, I think we're going to see more games like this where teams are just taking him out of the game or just limiting him to a couple yards, short route catches and things like that. He's not really making a huge impact in the game. For as much as he's getting targeted and getting receptions, to only finish with 47 yards and no touchdowns, it's not really affecting the game as much as you would like. So that's really what I have on the performances side of things. But now looking at the game and how it all played out, it's just all about the Cowboys. Because of the fact that the Falcons, executed on a lot of things. I liked a lot of what they did offensively. Really, the level of just disappointment and even disgust that I have come to realize with the Cowboys, really from just the beginning of this game on only the second, third down of the game. This was pointed out at some point today while I was watching SportsCenter or something. They pointed out today that on the second, third down of the game, the Cowboys had 10 guys on the field, and usually you get caught with too many guys on the field, but for you to not have enough guys on the field is I don't even know how you even do that, for anybody to not realize you have 10 guys or not have enough guys out there on the field. It was pretty bad, and it only got worse from there because, that was a pretty big third down that they could have gotten off the field, but not enough guys on the field. Obviously, the Falcons convert pretty easily, and the bad decisions only continued on from there. Another like another bad call, and I'm shaking my head because when I see a 4th and 1 call and I see one that any quarterback lined up in a shotgun, I'm pretty sure Dak was in a shotgun. If not, regardless of the fact, when I see a play where it's like a quick jet sweep going horizontal in a situation where it's 4th and 1 or 4th and less than a yard and you go horizontal, I can't explain how much I hate it and how much that play just irritates me. For the Cowboys to do that on a 4th and 1 and just have it completely be blown up and just not work at all, and CD receive the handoff and just go backwards right away as soon as he touched the ball. And then you see Mike McCarthy, slamming the tablet and whatnot. I mean, he's the one calling the plays. I don't know how you ideally call the play, obviously, to have it work, right? No one thinks the play is not going to work, but there's going to be so many other plays you could run in that situation. Dak is a big quarterback. You could just sneak it. I don't understand the reason for running something so complex in a way that, it just feels like they're doing too much. I don't understand the call there, running it horizontal instead of just going vertically, obviously in a short yardage situation. So that really angered me or just annoyed me watching that play be called. And, the score was 14-10 to start the second half, albeit through the bad mistakes and everything like that. And Dallas got the ball only down 4 to start the second half as well. So they're working with something here, right? They're not out of the game. But, it looks like they're going 3 and out once they go through their three downs and they're set up to punt and whatnot. And again, just a weird call where they decide to run a fake punt. Again, it just feels like they're doing too much because they're running the fake punt, and it looks like the gunner on the right sideline where the punter was throwing to, it either looks like he has no idea what the timing is of the play or that he's even getting the ball, because the punter just throws it anyway to a spot, trying to back shoulder the throw, I guess. And the gunner, I don't even know who it was, just has no idea that the ball's coming and falls completely short, and the play looks really dumb in hindsight, right? Once it's done, the play looks really just uncalled for, just completely just unnecessary at that point because they were only down 4. So for you to call that play right then and there, it's not like you were down 14 or anything like that. For you to throw all caution to the wind and throw a fake punt just on the first drive after halftime, only being down 4, I really didn't understand that call as well. And, that's another turnover for the Cowboys in this game. And, never felt like Atlanta really was at risk of losing it. I mentioned they were only up 4, but even then, when you see these plays be called, the 4th down, the 10 guys on the field, this fake punt, and also just miscommunications on the Darnell Mooney touchdown. They had a bunch formation on the right side, and Darnell just goes completely uncovered down the sideline. Nobody accounts for him, no communication or anything. When you see all those plays stack up, it just makes you feel like the Falcons are going to have to really lose this game for the Cowboys to win, quite honestly. And then from that point on, after the fake punt, Atlanta scored 2 touchdowns to outlast the Cowboys 27-21, while the Cowboys only got a field goal and a touchdown in the second half. So, this Cowboys team, not only was it the questionable play calls and things like that, which really irritated me, it was the 9 penalties as well. And just overall, each time I watch the Cowboys play, I'm just left feeling like this team is, I don't know, it's either not really 100% sold on the game plan, they all don't know the game plan, or they're just so discombobulated on game day. They're just thrown off very quickly off of the game plan, and everything is just very sloppy. They're disorganized and everything like that, and it's just, you just don't see any sort of light at the end of the tunnel for where you see a play or you see a game and think, all right, now they've gotten it going. Over the last couple weeks, it's never felt like you've had that moment where you're thinking, all right, they had a good series or had a good drive. All their positive moments come at the end of the game where, it all feels like it's lost already and they score once or twice and you think they're going to make it a game, but it never turns out to be the case. So it's just become a habit now at this point for this team. And with the injuries now also, to two of the guys that pretty much do the only thing well for this team. I don't know if it could get much worse than it is right now with the injury to Dak, with that hamstring injury. It was reported that he is set to miss multiple weeks now, so I don't know where you go from here. CeeDee Lamb is supposed to get an MRI done, or was supposed to get an MRI done today on an AC joint injury. I didn't see anything on him. I only really saw anything on Dak, so I'll look at that and see if I can find anything. But, the next 3 weeks, now they're sitting at 3-5. They play the Eagles next without Dak Prescott, so I don't think anybody has them winning that game. For as shaky as Houston's looked, I'll be super surprised if the Cowboys win that one. And then they play the Washington Commanders after that. Their next 3 weeks, this team could be at 3-8 in the next 3 weeks. And then really, it's going to be really bad, but I don't think it would really change anyone's feelings. I think everyone now is realizing that this season is pretty much out of the reach now of this Cowboys team. And am I saying should they start fire sailing everybody tomorrow to meet the deadline and maybe get something back and completely punt away this season? That's unlikely. I don't think Jerry Jones would just concede like that. But I don't know. I don't think it'd be too crazy to consider anyone like Brandon Cooks, DeMarcus Lawrence maybe, especially after this news about Dak. For as stubborn as Jerry's been on this team and how truly he will die with this team and think that instead of admitting that they're bad, I don't know how confident he could stand really in front of anybody and think that this team is going to win games now, especially without Dak Prescott. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what Jerry says the rest of the week, considering now what we know about Dak. So, that was a pretty bad showing on Sunday. It's not going to look too great or too much better as we go on through the rest of the season, considering these injuries. But we're going to stick on the Cowboys. We're going to go to a quick break right now, but when we return, we're going to stick with the Cowboys and talk about those injuries and just how we've come to this realization. I'm stating it now that this season, in my opinion, is done for the Cowboys, and I'm going to explain why in the next segment. So stick around and listen to that once we return after this break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
We are back on the Chip Shot Football Podcast now, and we're going to take a break from the recaps. We got a couple more after this next segment, but we had to bring up this topic about the Cowboys, right? Just continuing on from the last segment, because I think it's now a very real realization for those that maybe still felt like the Cowboys, for the kind of talent that they have on their team, Micah, Trayvon, Deron Bland, who I'm sure is going to come back at some point sooner rather than later, Dak, CeeDee, all these guys that have, DeMarcus Lawrence also is another one. Also, Overshown, their linebacker, is very good. I can't forget to mention him. I've been very impressed with him. But despite all of that, yesterday I think was a great just microcosm of what this season has made everyone feel like. Because yesterday we had Mike McCarthy, the head coach, smashing tablets. We had CeeDee Lamb get injured. We had Dak get injured as well with a hamstring, but also his hand was swollen up like a balloon. Also, what really did it for me, and what really, I think, just summed up how everyone's feeling and how, we've reached a breaking point, if you will, was when the camera caught Dak Prescott on the sidelines, And I never thought I'd hear anybody, much less Dak, get caught saying or basically mouthing that he said, "We effing suck" on the sideline. And that pretty much did it for me, because despite what Jerry and this team, even Dak, for the majority of the season, kept saying that, we have to get better, we're going to figure it out, it's on us to get better. And, everything teams with a losing record say, right, to make it not seem as bad. And Jerry as well, continuing to believe in this team for the lack of changes that he didn't produce or that he did produce in the offseason, continuing just to say, he believes in this team, they're going to get it, and so on and so on. I always felt like there was going to be a breaking point in this year, because I was never really convinced with this team from the moment Jerry said that they were going to go all in, to then have it all develop into basically not doing anything except signing their two biggest stars to very expensive contracts. It always felt like there was going to be a moment in this year where some play was going to happen, and I think it was that moment with Dak coming to the realization, just being sitting there defeated, just thinking about another loss, and just expressing how he really feels about this team. And I believe we saw that yesterday. We've been saying, we've been warning, we've been hypothesizing since the summer about this team and its makeup, and just how they're not built the right way. They're really lacking a lot of players that you need to even have a competitive team. They're not even considered a competitive team anymore, I believe. And, the decision really was all centered around their biggest stars, right? Micah not getting a contract yet or soon, but he is going to be due to get a major extension. But really, this whole offseason, and what really was going to determine how the Cowboys were going to look and really perform this year, was going to be on how they handled CeeDee Lamb and how they handled Dak Prescott. And everyone will point out to the fact that they could have figured out the contracts or extended them a year before, and that way they wouldn't have paid as much. But much like the Cowboys have shown us, they've waited until the last minute, and the decision was always going to be pay your guys, keep your two biggest stars. But like we talked about all offseason, it was either going to be that, or take the really hard road, make the really hard decision, and decide maybe we're not going to pay Dak, let's say, right? We're not going to pay Dak because he's already on extension, and CeeDee Lamb, he's the one that's holding out. We're going to pay CeeDee and wait until the season ends and see if we can get Dak Prescott again. That, albeit, I do acknowledge the fact that that's very uncharacteristic like for this team. There was no way the Cowboys were really ever going to do that, it felt like. It always felt like the way things were going, that they were always just going to cough up the money, and they waited quite literally until the last possible second to extend Dak. They extended CeeDee first, which was ideal, but, it was always going to be hard either way, whichever way you put it, because if you sign both of these guys like they did, that really leaves you with no money to do anything else. So I guess that fit with their plans of not doing anything either way. But what I thought and I threw out there as an option was, explore this season with Dak on that last year of his deal. Maybe he feels sour about it. Maybe he gives short answers and he just has a pout look about him just going throughout the entirety of this year. But at least with that decision, they should have taken it earlier, obviously, and then that way they could have used the money elsewhere. But because they were, going back and forth with Dak the entire offseason, really leaving them no choice but to extend them, right? To wait so long until the first day of the year, because when you reach that first day of the year, you're not going to go and sign anybody else. You're going to have to pay Dak anyway at that point. So they backed themselves into a corner, and they made Dak the highest paid quarterback ever in the NFL. So, in my opinion, they took the easy way out there instead of just saying, you know what, we're going to not sign Dak because this year, obviously after the loss to the Packers, we really need a lot of pieces to make this team competitive. And if we're going to have Dak for at least one more year, guaranteed under contract, let's go out and get other guys that makes this team a lot better, more solid on the defensive line, obviously, making a better run defending team, getting some more offensive linemen in there, getting somebody to complement CeeDee, because Brandon Cooks is all right, but you don't really have another guy to step up in those moments. So let's go do all of that and make the best out of this year. And then afterwards, we'll get together with Dak and see if we can make it work. If not, they're just going to have to look for a new quarterback. And I know that's almost like the death wish, right? Having to find a new quarterback, right? It sounds easy, but you look at other teams around the NFL, and that's the last thing they'll say is easy. So I know that decision was not the popular one to just say, you know what, Dak, we're not going to pay you, and kind of take the quarterback position for granted. And it's not Dak's fault or anything like that. I'm not saying he shouldn't have gotten paid, because at that point, if you're Dak and you're getting that money, it's not his fault that the market was that high, and it's also not his fault that the Cowboys waited this long. If anybody had that opportunity to receive that contract, they're going to take it, and there's no problem in that. It's much more on the Cowboys side of things where they just waited until the last minute. So instead of taking the hard choice and potentially living in a world where you don't have Dak Prescott and you let him move on in free agency, probably knowing that you're going to be not as good in the foreseeable future, in the near future, instead of doing that and possibly being bad, likely being bad, now we're at week 9 this year, and you have Dak Prescott and you have CeeDee Lamb, and you're a bad team anyways. So the difference is that instead of having Dak now, paying him a lot of money, same thing with CeeDee Lamb, and still being bad, you could have in the offseason got some more pieces. You know, everyone says Derrick Henry, right? That's been beaten down at an excessive rate now. Obviously, they should have gone Derrick Henry, but other guys in free agency that would have helped this team out a lot would have, obviously now in hindsight, looked a lot better. So now we get to week 9 now in 2024, and why I think that this situation is at an all-time low, at least as far as I can remember, is because of a few things, right? You look at the situation now and how they're a bad team anyway, with Dak on their team pretty much locked in because of the amount of money they gave him. Why I think this is absolute rock bottom for this team is because, first, they are third in their division with 3 games behind second place right now at a 3-5 record. Also, Mike McCarthy is, like we all know, in a lame duck situation. Does anybody really think that people are going to not tune out what Mike McCarthy has to say now? I've heard some people say, like, it's easy to call this season a loss, right? To just call it a wash and just forget about it. But I've heard some people say that, you know, Mike has to go in there and, you know, approach every day like they still have some fight left in them. Mike has to be the leader and whatnot and everything like that. That all sounds great, but talking realistically, already I think going into this season, Mike McCarthy was in a bad situation. For them not to extend him and to come off of a bad loss like they did to Green Bay, now you have this season, you're at 3-5, and not only that, if people weren't already tuning Mike McCarthy out because of the bad record and the bad sensations you're getting from the top of the organization to the players, I'm sure, already starting to feel frustrated and annoyed with what they're doing each and every week. If people weren't already tuning out Mike McCarthy, you think they're not going to tune him out now even more, if that's even possible, with the fact that you have Dak, your leader, your highest paid player, on your team definitely and in the NFL, saying that this team sucks, just flat out on the sideline, just admitting and expressing how he truly feels. You don't think that's really going to make everybody else around this team think, all right, well, if Dak is admitting that they suck and that he's, you know, not really feeling great about this team, why should I? Why should I feel any different? And why should I listen to Mike McCarthy now if we're not going to get any better? That level, that mood in that organization, in that locker room right now, I can't imagine what anybody can do to really uplift that spirit, especially now that Dak is injured as well. That's not going to help anything. And also, you know, you have CeeDee Lamb hurt now with that AC joint, and they're going to wait on the MRI scans. But these players aren't, you know, naive to the fact that these two guys are the best part of their team. And the fact that if both of them are going to miss time, again, you don't think that's going to really demoralize this team even more. It sounds great to try and rally the troops now, but being in that locker room and how demoralizing this loss is and seeing what Dak is doing, not only that, you see the frustration boiling over with Jerry Jones, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, threatening radio hosts and their jobs about criticizing him, rightly so. You see how ticked off he got at that. You see Trayvon Diggs also with him being called out in the on X or whatnot, and how he reacted afterwards. This team, we're seeing it just in front of us, inside after the games and out on the football field, how this team is just crumbling from the inside and also out on the football field right now as well. And again, what really is the worst part about this team is the fact that I'm not the only one that's thought that this Cowboys team was not going to be good. The worst part about this whole situation is that a lot of people predicted and expected this team to be bad this year, and for them to not do anything about it, now back themselves into a corner with the amount of money they paid Dak and CeeDee. Again, not their fault because the organization just mismanaged everything. I think Dak and CeeDee are supposed to account for almost 50% of this team's salary cap next year. So that's not going to help out anything too much because they're not going to be able to get a lot of players in at that rate with that salary cap, and they're not going to move on from Dak or CeeDee. So it might even get worse before it gets better for this team. So at this point now, Jerry, I thought it was kind of ironic in a way that he almost foreshadowed this team potentially being in the mix for some trades come tomorrow's deadline. But, I don't know who they're going to trade for, but one guy isn't going to fix this entire situation. And they should be a little bit cautious because if they think that one guy is going to fix this entire situation, they might oversell or overspend to try and get a guy, and then really putting their future at a risk if they give up like a third or second round pick for one guy that's really not going to make a difference. That could make the situation even worse. So I'd caution them a little bit with overspending. I know they're desperate, but I think at this point they're not going to do it, obviously, because Jerry's been pretty stubborn. But I don't think it's crazy now to admit that this season is just pretty bleak at this point, in a pretty dire situation. I feel like a lot of people would applaud Jerry Jones if he came out and said, I've messed up this season. This team isn't in a spot where we wanted to, and that falls on me. I feel like a lot of people would applaud him for doing something like that and admitting something like that, but that's probably not going to happen. And also, like I reiterated in the first segment, I don't think it's too crazy to consider selling a guy like Brandon Cooks or DeMarcus Lawrence and see what you can get back for them, because at this point, trying to build this team better up for years to come rather than salvaging this season already seems to be like a more realistic goal than, like I said, salvaging this season. So it's I just recapped everything about this team and how it's all kind of crumbling, and I don't know what we're going to see from this team without Dak Prescott. So we're going to see how it all pans out in the weeks to come, starting off with Philadelphia this upcoming week. But we're going to stick to the NFC now and move past the Dallas Cowboys and go to one of the most anticipated games on my radar this past Sunday when the Lions took on the Packers in a big NFC North matchup. The Lions came out on top pretty convincingly despite the score, so we're going to get into that, what we saw, what we learned from either side when we return in just a couple of seconds.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the show here, guys. We're going to jump back into the recaps now and looking at some of the past games that we saw this past Sunday. One of them that I had to bring up here on Monday to start the week was what we saw out of the Lions and out of the Packers game on Sunday, because this game was one of the most anticipated games of the year up until this point so far through the first 9 weeks between the Lions and Green Bay, the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. And this was actually the first time this year that the Lions were playing outdoors, and they still won 24-14. There was all this talk about them leading up into this game about, it was pretty funny how people thought that, the weather and them playing outdoors and things like that was going to make a huge difference. And actually, they look like the team that has been playing outdoors all season, quite funny enough. And the Packers, rather, looked like the team that was really playing in the elements for the first time this season. The win takes the Lions to 7-1 on the year, while the Packers go to 6-3 now and go into their bye week as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's a sour note to go into the bye week, obviously, if you're the Packers. But for the Lions, sitting at 7-1 for the first time since 1956, and they've won at Lambeau for the third straight year now. If there was still any doubt, really emphasizing the point that the Lions are the team to beat, not only in the NFC North, but really in the entire NFC conference, with just how they dominated the Packers, who are not a bad team. They're one of the better teams in the NFC, but the way that the Lions, despite the score, like I said, really just had full control of this game was pretty resounding to see. Even for as close as a game as I thought it could be, with the Packers and all the potential they had on offense and things like that, it was I was left more disappointed with what I saw out of the Packers, and I'll get more into that in a few minutes here. But also on this Lions team, still just to round it off, they haven't won 3 straight games in Lambeau since they won 6 straight games back in 1986 and 1991, just showing really the significance, I think, of this run that the Lions rather are on currently right now, because it's at a historical rate. It hasn't been done for about like about 40 to 30 years now. So it is remarkable what they're doing, especially in their division, with the Packers, who have pretty much dominated this division for the entire Rodgers era, Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers era. Now the Lions are really making their case now to really pound their fist down on the table and say, you know what, like, that era is now out. It's forgotten about. This is our era now. This is our time. And the way that they're showing their dominance, not only against the Packers, but against the Vikings, I think it says a lot now. If anybody had any doubts still on the Packers, I'm pretty sure that was all put to rest in yesterday's game. But it wasn't without some the word is escaping me now, some complications in this game, because in this game, the Lions had Brian Branch, one of their best players just overall on their team. He was ejected in this game for a helmet-to-helmet hit on Green Bay's Bo Melton, which looked bad in slow motion, I will admit that. But when the play happened live, I didn't think it was too bad. But obviously when you slow it down, you see kind of Brian Branch's head go down and kind of just like angle down in a way that the back of his helmet hits like Bo Melton straight in the face. So when you replay that and look at it a bunch of times, the officials felt like it was appropriate to eject him out of the game. And Brian Branch felt a way about it. I'm pretty sure most people disagree with it, just from listening to the broadcast and just my own personal thoughts on it. I thought it was pretty harsh, and I'm not saying it's the right way of making a decision, but when you have big games like this and a big player, an important player on either team makes a questionable call or has a play where he could or be ejected or anything like that, or could face severe disciplinary actions in the game, like being ejected or anything like that, usually I feel like officials do right by not forgiving it, like it's not an egregious act. If it's really egregious, yeah, eject them. But if it's on the border, like I felt this call was, I usually feel like it's the right call to just keep him in the game rather than making such a drastic decision so early on. But the officials felt it was egregious enough, so they are the ones that make the calls on the field, despite what everybody thought. And it felt like a big point in the game where the Packers could have taken advantage of it, and the Lions already being down a guy like Aiden Hutchinson and not being too excelling too much in the pass rushing department or whatnot. It felt like losing a guy like Brian Branch now in the secondary could be very detrimental, but just like the Lions have done all season, they've just continued to roll on and really not lose a beat with losing one of their most important guys, in large part because Kirby Joseph continues to show out this year. He recorded another interception in this game, his 6th of the year, to tie, funny enough, Green Bay's Xavier McKinney. Both of them have 6 interceptions to lead the NFL so far this year, and this is Kirby Joseph's 4th interception against the Packers, and also he has an interception in 5 of the last 6 games recently for the Detroit Lions. He's been around the football the entire year. He's been a magnet to turnovers, and anytime any ball comes in his direction, it seems like he gets his hands on it and just creates a splash play more often than not. And, he did it again in this game, and really from what we see from, the stats and everything like that, they don't really suggest, again, like the score also, that the Lions had an exceptional game on offense or anything like that. Jared Goff finished with 145 yards. He only threw 1 touchdown. The other touchdown went to Jahmyr Gibbs. And David Montgomery had 73 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs added another 65. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a big game. I love the fact that he showed up in a Green Bay Sucks sweatshirt. That was pretty funny. He had 7 receptions for 56 yards. He had the game going, starting it off in the right way with a touchdown on a great back shoulder throw. And then you look at the Packers as well. Jordan Love had 273 yards. He had an interception, like we said, to Kirby Joseph. Josh Jacobs started off very well, and he had 95 yards on the day, but unfortunately, there was moments in this game where I felt like the Packers really let themselves down, and Jayden Reed was really the one showing out in the passing game. He had 5 receptions for 113 yards, but really what's funny about this game that I will get to in just a couple of minutes, but looking at how this game all played out and such, only a 10-point loss, like I said, but Green Bay really missed a lot of chances, and I thought head coach Matt LaFleur said it best after the game, where he said they played a clean game, much cleaner than we did, and I thought that was perfectly said for their head coach, because the Lions, the numbers won't show it, and you really had to watch this game to see how it always felt like they kept the game at a distance where they felt comfortable with. They were running the ball pretty well, getting a lot of crucial first downs, and they didn't beat themselves. In these games where you have a lot riding on the line and the margin of error is so close, and you have a good Packers team hosting a good Lions team, there's already going to be enough troubles in this game for yourself to kind of overcome a pretty good defense that leads the NFL in takeaways in the Packers defense, lead a very high-powered offense as well. There's already enough things you have to worry about without getting in your own way. And I think that was the story of the game that Matt LaFleur pretty much pointed out. The fact that the Lions played a clean game where they did everything they wanted to in this game, whereas the Packers, they had a lot of drops. They had a lot of penalties as well, and that crucial turnover, right? It's just too much to overcome for a very efficient just machine that the Lions team is to have all those things go wrong and still expect to beat this Lions team is asking too much, in my opinion. So, they missed a lot of chances, in my opinion. Also, it looked like Green Bay, just with the amount of drops, not being on the same page, and also Jordan Love fumbling a snap as well, it looked like they were the ones stealing. Really, it looked like they were the only ones playing outdoors with the rain, because the Lions didn't have any mistakes, like I said, and they were really well prepared in this game, where I felt like the Packers dropped the ball a little bit. And if you look at this game also with those missed chances that I said, if you look at because Brandon McManus had a missed field goal in this game, and if it wasn't for that pick 6, which again absolutely can't happen if you're Jordan Love, that's a 10-point swing right there. That's the difference in this game. Without that touchdown from the Lions, you take away 7 points, that's 17. It finishes 17-14. And if Brandon McManus makes that field goal, it's 17-7. barring anything else happening. And if this game plays out exactly as it did, it's 17-7. It's 17-17, although it might not be deserved, but it doesn't matter. You're going for the win. If it's 17-17, nobody cares if you deserve the win or not. You find yourself in a game like that, anything can happen, and I felt like the Packers played themselves out of that opportunity, which is funny because they outgained the Lions 411 yards to 261, but the Lions were just much more efficient with whatever they did. They took advantage of their opportunities, and Green Bay also drove inside the Lions' 35-yard line on 3 possessions without scoring a touchdown. Only one of their 4 red zone possessions ended up in a touchdown. The other 2 were field goals, and the other one was a missed field goal as well. So when you get these opportunities also for the missed chances that they had, you can't let the Lions off the hook and not score touchdowns. So only score 1 touchdown in those situations. Obviously, what's the difference in this game? So you have to take advantage of those situations just as much as you try not to mess things up for yourself as well. And the Lions also were only 2 of 4 in the red zone, so they weren't at a exceptional pace where they were just hitting everything and the Packers were missing anything. No, they only converted on 1 more touchdown than the Packers did. But again, the pick 6 is really what made the difference in this game to me, because going into the half, you're at 10 to 3, I believe, and there was only like 40-something seconds left. So for Jordan to throw that interception, it really reminded me of the Rams interception, which he threw, just falling down and just throwing it to who knows where and having it be intercepted for a pick 6. I know Jordan Love said after the game that he didn't really see him, and obviously it was much less egregious, but it obviously looks worse, and Matt LaFleur expressed his frustrations with people asking about that interception, but I would push back on that because of the fact that it was so huge of a mistake that it really changes the course of this game, because at that point, the Lions go up 2 scores, and they're feeling a lot more comfortable, whereas the Packers are very defeated, giving up that pick 6 going into the half. Before that, you're thinking, all right, it's 1 score, let's just go into the half and try and reset this thing here and get back in the second half with our best foot. But when you put yourself in such a hole like that, knowing what the Lions are as a team, you're really thinking like, all right, like this is going to be really hard now, especially when we're making these mistakes. It really puts you in a bad mood. So I thought that was what really swung this game around. And, it is a little bit worrying for Jordan Love, if I am being honest, because I didn't really see such turnovers like this, especially towards the second half of the year. But hopefully this bye week can be a time where they work on that, and Jordan Love comes back a lot more, I think, just relaxed, because a lot of times he looks a bit antsy. He just looks more relaxed. Hopefully after this bye week, and the Packers can go on a little bit of a run here, because they are a good team, and I know the Lions are a great team as well, and it feels like this won't be the only time. They have 1 more game to go, but I feel like in this next matchup, and maybe even in the playoffs, this team could match up a couple more times. So this is a big loss, big loss for the Packers, but learning from this and getting potentially your revenge later on in the year could be a bit more sweet and a bit more meaningful if they do it later on. But the biggest thing is that they have to learn from this at this point. No one's giving up on them, but it is certainly something that they will have to learn from going forward. So with that being the case, we have 1 more segment to get to. We are about 45 minutes away from kickoff here for Monday Night Football, so we're going to recap that and preview it in the last segment here on the Chip Shot Football Podcast. thank you guys for joining me here on the last segment of today's show. And looking at this game that we have coming up here for the Monday Night Football game here on in just about 40 to 45 minutes here, we're looking at this matchup between the Buccaneers and the Kansas City Chiefs because of the fact that the week concludes tonight with this game, and the Bucs are on a 2-game losing streak as well going into this game, and they're going to be traveling to Arrowhead to face the Kansas City Chiefs, who are obviously still undefeated at this point. They come to this game at 7-0, while the Buccaneers come in not reeling like they're like this is make or break for them, but it is a crucial point in their season for a couple points that I will make. But they come in at 4-4 so far on the year, and Kansas City, on the other hand, it couldn't be playing out any better for them, quite honestly. And not only are they still undefeated, but they could look to make history tonight, because a win would mean that it would be their 14th straight win going back to last season, which would be a record in the NFL for a consecutive amount of wins for a team. And also, after starting the season 3-1, the Buccaneers have lost 3 of the last 4 games. So it's a point of the season where, oddly enough, it's similar to last year, where they got out to a fast start but lost 6 of their 7 games. But after that fast start last year, they lost 6 of their 7 games, and after that, they won 5 of their next 6 games after that dreadful losing streak. So familiar territory here for the Buccaneers, but the difference is obviously those crucial injuries to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, where last year they were just trying to figure out this puzzle and trying to figure out this team. This year, they're going to have to do it without 2 of their best players. At least one of them, in Chris Godwin, is officially out for the year, where Mike Evans is not expected back until after their bye week, and that's in a couple weeks. So they're going to have to make do with the receivers that they have. Also, looking at some of the other storylines in this game, it's going to be the second game for DeAndre Hopkins, and also the first game for Josh Uche after the Chiefs traded with New England this past week to acquire Josh Uche to join George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, and these guys on defense. So it should be his debut tonight. We're looking at some of the inactives for tonight's game, leading up to it. They should be up here for you guys to see and for me to tell you guys about them. There is going to be no Jalen McMillan tonight for the Buccaneers. He was dealing with, I believe, a hamstring injury. He's not going to be able to go tonight. And that should be the last major injury that was at a 50-50 chance of happening. Jalen McMillan was questionable. He is out definitely in this game. Sterling Shepard was the other wide receiver that was questionable, but he looks to be set to go tonight for the Buccaneers. So that's a good sign for them to at least have Sterling Shepard active and healthy tonight. So no Jalen McMillan, but at least they'll have Sterling Shepard. Also, on the inactives information, there's going to be no Juju Smith-Schuster, obviously, for the Kansas City Chiefs, but that's pretty much it for them as well. They're going to have a pretty healthy team, whereas the Bucs are going to be down another wide receiver in Jalen McMillan. And sticking with the Buccaneers here for a second, just looking at what this team is and has been so far with the injuries and everything like that. Mike Evans is looking to be back after their bye week, like I said, in the game against the New York Giants potentially. But this offense is still number 4 in total yards, also one of the leaders in the NFL in points per game at 29. But their last 2 games and their next 2 games are the toughest part of their schedule. Their last 2 games were already losses to the Baltimore Ravens and the Atlanta Falcons, and their next 2 games start tonight with the Chiefs and also with the San Francisco 49ers next week before they go on their bye week. So they're in the thick of their season right now, and they've already lost 2 of them. So ideally, you would like to win the next 2, but I don't know how likely that is, unfortunately.